Implementing Content Standards in Adult Education. My name is Jessie Stad, and I am the Project Manager for the LINCS Professional Development Center. Before we begin, Ben Bruno is going to give us a brief overview of our webinar platform.
Hi, thanks, Jessie. So just to go over quickly, if you haven't used WebEx before, if you can see this slide and hear our voices, then you're all set to go. On the right side of the screen, there's a few icons on the top right. Participants and chat are the main ones I'd like you to pay attention to. The chat bubble icon on the top right will toggle your chat window on the right sidebar off and on. So if you find the chat distracting, you can toggle it off. If you would like to send a chat, make sure you toggle it on. And then as the bottom of this slide indicates, please make sure that you send all of your chats to all participants. Not all attendees. Sounds similar, but it's different. So please, all participants, and that way we can all see your questions or comments and get to them. And if you have any, excuse me, if you have any tech issues, you can send private chats to me, Ben Bruno. We are recording this webinar, so you know, and the link will be sent out afterwards. That's it for me. Jessie, I'm going to hand this back to you now.
Thanks, Ben. As Ben said, you can use the chat box to both send questions around the technology and as well to ask questions during today's webinar. So please feel free to use that chat as you need. So let's get started. To kick off our webinar, we'll first hear from Christopher Coro, the Deputy Director for the Division of Adult Education and Literacy at the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the U.S. Department of Education. Chris?
Sure. Thanks, Jessie. Welcome, everyone. I kind of scrolled quickly through the attendee list, and I guess some of you get a good morning and some of you get a good afternoon. It's great to see so many people here on the webinar. This is really, really important work, so I'm glad to see we have such good participation. This is important not only in terms of bringing evidence-based instruction and quality instruction to our adult learners, but also equally as important, using the content standards ensures that our students are held to the same high quality bar as students in the K-12 world. And certainly I think we would all agree that a lower bar is not anything we would want to offer our students. So to see so much interest in standards-based instruction and in states incorporating their state-adopted challenging content standards and trying to implement it in the classrooms is very, very heartwarming for us here at OCTAE. I'd like to thank my LINCS colleagues and partners for helping us to organize this event today. And I'd also like to give particular thanks to today's two presenters. I think you guys who are attending today are in for a real treat. We are able to bring presenters from Arizona and from Pennsylvania, two states that have worked long and hard on standards implementation, and each have very distinct stories to tell, which I think is part of the message OCTAE hopes the takeaway is here today. It isn't a straight line. There's many paths to advancing standards implementation in adult education classrooms. And I want to thank again Beverly and Christine, because they've been involved in this work for several years and have really done some top-notch work with their practitioners, and I'm glad that they could make time to be with us today to share their stories. I hope that at the end of this webinar, you'll be inspired to reach back to our LINCS team to find out more information about how you can access the numerous Standards in Action technical assistance materials to advance standards implementation in your state or in your local program. With that, again, I want to thank everyone for being here today and hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Jessie?
Thanks so much, Chris, for both joining us today and for giving a really great setup and context for today's webinar. So let's go ahead and look at today's agenda. So first, Beverly Wilson from Arizona and Christine Hauk from Pennsylvania will both share their state standards implementation efforts. and discuss their participation in the most recent Standards in Action, or SIA, project, which ran from 2014 to 2016. As Chris mentioned in his opening remarks, both Arizona and Pennsylvania were 2 of 12 participating states in a project that piloted the Standards in Action Advanced Level Professional Development Methods and Materials. The Advanced Level SIA professional development activities delve into the instructional implications of level-specific content standards in English language arts and literacy, or as we'll refer to it in today's webinar, ELA and literacy, and mathematics. The advanced level professional development builds upon the foundational level professional development units and are designed to specifically shape the approach adult educators will take to implement their academic standards. So first we'll hear from Bev about Arizona's Standards Implementation Initiative, and then we'll hear from Christine about Pennsylvania's initiative. Following that, the next portion of the webinar addresses the Standards in Action training and technical assistance opportunities and the benefits of working with the Standards in Action coaches and trainers through the LINCS Professional Development Center. I'll discuss how states and programs can begin by assessing the effectiveness of their state standards initiatives. The checklist for assessing effective implementation helps to identify the types of support, both professional development and technical assistance, that are needed at the state and local program levels. We'll then look at the various Standards in Action training and technical assistance offerings that you can access through the LINCS Professional Development Center. And of course, we'll take as many of your questions as time permits, both questions for Bev or Christine, or for me and the LINCS Professional Development Center. Before I turn the floor over to Bev, I'd like to explain how Bev and Christine have organized their remarks. First, we posed 4 areas of focus for them to address. They will each address all 4 topics, which range from their commitment to full-scale standards implementation to the success of their efforts and the benefits of their participation in the Standards in Action project. As they speak to the slides, the pertinent questions will appear on the slide, and Bev and Christine will each have about 15 to 20 minutes to present. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Beverly Wilson from Arizona. Beverly?
Chris said. I'd like to share a little bit about Arizona's adult education system because I think it helps set the context for the Standards in Action work that we've done in our state and how it fits our needs. Like all adult education systems, Arizona must align the state system to federal and state laws, rules, and regulations. We have contractual requirements with adult education providers that outline the requirements for program and fiscal operations and grant assurances that providers agree to follow and implement, as many states do. And then we have a teaching and learning component of the system, and that's built on standards-based professional learning standards, adult education teacher standards, and content standards. So for Arizona, having a standards-based system is an essential component of an adult education system and provides the framework for teaching and learning in our state for adult educators. So we were asked to respond to a couple of questions, as Jesse had alluded to earlier. And so the questions posed were, what motivated your state to submit to full-scale integration of the standards, and what has it meant in terms of time, money, and other resources? So to help answer that, we created a visual to show how the standards implementation worked using the Standards in Action model. So the Standards in Action process and tools were intentionally designed to improve teacher instruction, and that's what appealed to us about the Standards in Action initiative. It aligns so well to support a standards-based instructional system, and the SIA innovations, tools, and the framework have become a really important part of Arizona's professional learning system. But like many state leadership initiatives, scaling up can take time. There are many competing priorities that have slowed the full Standards in Action implementation. For instance, a lot of us can relate to this. WIOA implementation was one. We had a recent grant competition that took a lot of time at the state level. And then we also looked at WIOA partner planning and priority training needs for local program administrators, which also took time away from scaling up the standards and action work. However, to help with scaling up, we started to put some pieces into place. We're in the process of identifying trainers and teacher leaders who will integrate the standards and action processes and innovations into multiple professional learning opportunities that we already have in place. And we started that work over the last 2 years. We offer Math Institutes for teachers annually, and those cohorts of teachers have an opportunity to implement the standards and action innovations that you see on your PowerPoint slide. Things like looking at student work and assignments, looking at revising their math lessons and what curricular resources they can use in order to increase the rigor of their standards-based instruction, as well as integrating these standards and action tools into ESL Pro work that we did and English Language Arts Institutes. The next question we were asked to respond to is, what was the significance of writing and using a strategic long-range implementation plan to articulate the scope and rollout of our standards initiative? So one of the things that happened in the work with standards in action is when we realized the scope of the SIA tools and innovations that were available to us, we realized that we really needed to look at overhauling our adult education content standards. So our strategic planning through SIA helped us focus on short and long-term state leadership priorities and goals. And as a result of that, one of the most important decisions that the state office made as a result of our direct involvement with standards in action was the need to reevaluate our adult education standards. We analyzed those, we determined that they needed to be revised, and so we moved forward with that revision process that we've actually been undergoing for the last year and a half. And so we kicked off in February of 2016 looking at all of our content work groups, specifically in the subject areas of social studies, science, English language arts, and mathematics. And one of the decisions that we made at the state office was that we had 7 sets of standards for teachers to look at, and we determined that we needed to consolidate those. And so in the standards revision work that we've done, we went ahead and looked at integrating the International Society for Technology and Education Standards, ISTE, and the Workplace Employability Skills Standards into each of the content standards. That was an important decision that we made, and the teams that are working on this, and we have about 35 adult educators from around the state and subject matter experts, have embraced this work, and we're really excited about the products that they've developed. We've just finished the revisions for English language arts standards and mathematics standards, and that will give us a great opportunity to now implement the standards in action innovations and scale that up using the newly revised adult education content standards to do that work. The other question we responded to were what were the benefits of participating in the standards in action professional development and the technical assistance activities. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the standards in action innovations, here they are. There are 5 of them. It's a resource alignment, so giving us the opportunity to look at the curricular resources at the program level and to ensure that they align with the revised content standards. Having teachers work together collaboratively by looking at the lessons that they're creating for class and the resources that they're using to teach their lessons, and really ensuring that those lessons are rigorous and that they align well with the content standards. A lesson study is focused on using another collaborative process that teachers love to work in, and it can be done through professional learning communities, study groups, and critical friends. And then one of the most important pieces of these innovations is for teachers to actually look at the student work that's produced as a result of their lessons and the assignment analysis. Assignments are a key practice tool for students to practice the skills that they've learned in the standards. And if those assignments aren't rigorous and produce the level of work for students to be able to practice those skills, then teachers have an opportunity to look at that together, analyze that, and increase the rigor of those assignments and lessons. It also gives them an opportunity to reteach the lesson if the student work didn't produce the results that they were looking for. The state Standards in Action team also benefited from the long-term professional development that was provided as a result of this initiative, as it was rolled out over the course of 18 months. It allowed the state team, as adult learners, to process new information, learn new information, and then we could apply what we had learned throughout the project. And one of the most exciting ways to apply that was through the innovation of classroom observation. This tool allows our trainers to go into teachers' classrooms and for teachers to work collaboratively to look to see if standards are being implemented in a high-quality way in classrooms. And this tool also provides a standardized way of looking at if standards-based instruction is happening in the classroom. The Standards in Action team that worked in this initiative really loved this tool, and we can't wait to be able to scale this up and take this out to the rest of the state and work with our instructional leaders on using this tool. Another question we responded to, two more. To what do you attribute the success of your state's implementation efforts? And what do you see as the primary strengths of your state's standards implementation initiative? So one of the things we really loved about the Standards in Action innovations and work is that all of the activities and the tools focus on the work the teacher is doing. They focus on closing the gap between the demands of the college and career-ready standards and classroom instruction. And the innovations also focus on key instructional advances and specific level CCR math and ELA standards. So there's a lot of similarities between the work that teachers are doing. All of these depend on groups of instructors working collaboratively together in study groups or in professional learning communities to do their work. It's really difficult for teachers to improve their practice and to become more effective if they're working in isolation. Collaboration is the key to increasing the rigor of lessons and creating a standards-based instructional model that helps students achieve their goals. The alignment of the teacher work to the CCR standards or your state standards also helps teachers refine their lessons. And they address instruction because instructors get the opportunity to study together and create and refine an instructional lesson together so that the results are a well-honed lesson that then allows students to be able to work on rigorous assignments that they've created and delivered. Instructors also have the opportunity to help refine the alignment of their assignments, work backwards, so back mapping from those assignments to determine what, if anything, should be done differently to help with the instruction for students so that students can meet the alignment of those standards. The innovations also pertain to the real work of instructors in the classroom and the pilots that we've done around the state and the work that we've done with the professional learning initiatives that we have integrated with these innovations really help teachers do that work. And they've been very excited about using standard tools and templates to help them do their work. It helps them delve into the content standards, the CCR standards, and it helps because administrators understand that learning communities are an important part of their processes at their program level. It also allows just-in-time support because teachers are able to target what they need to be doing in the classroom for students over time, and administrators are able to target the kinds of support that teachers need to be more effective in the classroom. And this is an example of one of the innovations, just to flesh it out a little bit. One of the innovations that I mentioned before is focusing on assignments and student work. And it's a 4-step process. So teachers together collectively analyze the purpose and demands of an assignment they've given students in class, or that they intend to give students. Then they can also select the standard that best matches the assignment demand. Teachers may go back and then teach their lesson, and then they can come back together and look at the student work that was produced as a result of that assignment and analyze it together with their learning community or their study group. The teachers may give feedback on that lesson by analyzing the student work together, and teachers have the opportunity to redesign and strengthen the assignment that they've given. They can reteach that. In some cases, we've gotten feedback that teachers have just scrapped the assignment completely and have selected another one because the particular assignment they selected didn't actually teach the content that they intended to teach. And that's okay. That's an important part of growing and collaborating and learning together as teachers. So Christine, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beverly. We're now going to hear from Christine, who's going to share Pennsylvania's experiences. If you do have questions for Bev, we're going to hold them until after Christine, and then we can have a quick Q&A for both of our state guests. And then following the last session, we'll do Q&A again. So at this point, I will turn it over to Christine.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me, Jesse and team. I don't know, after Chris's great introduction and Beverly's presentation, I hope I live up to it. So with that, I'm going to answer the same questions that Bev answered, but I'm going to focus on the long-range planning and the benefits of the technical assistance, and I'll be brief on these other questions. So the first question, what motivated our state to commit to full-scale integration of standards? I wish I could say something really intellectual and great here, but what it really was, there were a couple factors. I used to be a program advisor, and I still am now again, and I was an instructor, an adult education instructor, and through all of that, I had sort of observed that my lessons when I was teaching and in classrooms across the state, I really felt like instruction and curricula were sort of like lacking in what we're calling rigor. And the CCR SIA materials seemed like they would really help to raise the quality of our instruction. So that was really my motivation. You know, and that's better instruction is hopefully going to lead to student outcomes, which is my motivation for everything I do. So it was really just that sort of simple for us. I didn't have any idea what I was getting into when I signed up for this, and I'm glad because I might have been afraid of it, and I wasn't, and it worked out great. So what has it meant for us in terms of time, money, and other resources? So for the initial implementation year, it turned out we had some extra funds that we hadn't allocated or awarded. So what the state director did was she used them to give programs a little extra money for professional development time so they could start CCRS professional learning communities. And that was the main vehicle for the work at the program level. And those professional learning communities continue to this day, and they are required by policy. In terms of money, I don't really think it cost us very much more than we were already investing in PD. We just sort of spent that money in a more targeted way, you know, rather than, you know, what a colleague of mine calls onesies and twosies. We sort of fully committed to doing this one large project and really targeted sort of raising the quality of instruction through this process. And what I'll say is I know we gained way more than we spent time or money-wise because the materials were all developed for us and they trained us to use them. You know, we've built agency capacity to do their own professional development. Our agencies now all have instructional leaders who are assigned to this work. They lead the standards work and they lead those professional learning communities. And, you know, the work sort of continues with the support of our professional development system, and I've sort of maybe stepped back from it a little. So it kind of goes on without me, which is great. Can I have the next slide, Jesse? So I want to spend a little bit of time on this question because for me this was very important, the significance of a strategic long-term implementation plan, because I really needed that to sort of wrap my head around how I was going to get this out and how we were going to roll this out. There were, so many moving parts to this. So I created a 3-year plan, and it included a sustainability plan, which is where we're at now. We're like on the sustainability end now. The project provided me with a template. I'm sure they can provide you with that same template. It may even be posted on links somewhere. And I used that initially to keep track of the big picture, and then I added sort of my own take on it with some more detail. And if you can flip to the next slide, we'll see that. So this is just one page of a multi-page document that I had, but as you can see, I really went down into detail. And I did that because there were so many moving parts. This was the largest undertaking I had done since I started in adult education, and I felt nervous, all the investment in this project, and I didn't want to wing it. This plan changed and moved in terms of deadlines and timing, but we eventually accomplished everything on this list. Looking back, I probably should have used project management software to manage this project, and for those of you that know how to use that or have access to something like Microsoft Project, I would highly recommend doing that with your team. I think it would have made this much easier to organize. Anyway, having this plan sort of caused 2 things to happen. One, it helped me to choose the right team because the team could see what they were getting into, right? They could see all this work that was going to come at them, and they could decide whether they could commit to that work or not, because your team has to fully commit. So, they knew what they were agreeing to do. The other thing the plan helped me to do really was to obtain buy-in from the field, and I'll give an example of that. So before we were accepted into this as one of the 12 agencies for the CCR SIA project, we had done some work with unpacking standards. We had gone to a meeting in DC and learned how to unpack the standards, and we came back. We had a summer institute where we taught everybody how to unpack the standards, and the program people couldn't have been more annoyed with me than they were, because I didn't provide them with sort of a, like, where are we going with this moment? So they were doing that in isolation. They didn't see the big picture of it. So when this plan was developed and I could share this plan with them and say, hey, here's what's coming down the pike, they could see the benefit for them. They could see the benefit for their teachers. They could see the ultimate benefit for their students. This 3-year plan actually has now become an overall 3-year plan. I don't do an initiative anymore without a 3-year plan. I have one huge 3-year plan for every initiative I'm managing, and that keeps me on track. That keeps my teams on track. So I credit this project with sort of giving me a framework for not just this particular project, but all of my projects. Could I have the next slide? Oh, and you don't have to go back, but one other thing. What I learned from this project was that I don't even want to invest a penny or a minute or a second on something if I can't support it properly. This project really came with a lot of support and taught us how important it was to support people as they're working on these initiatives. So now we're on to what the benefits are of participating in this professional development and technical assistance, and I can't say enough about that. I can't encourage that enough. The materials are well-designed, high quality, research-based, super rigorous. They're so well-designed, we use that same format now for almost all of our statewide trainings, having the table coaches that we had at these original trainings. We've followed their procedures almost to a T. The face-to-face sessions that we attended were all extremely relevant and hands-on. And my team, I can't say enough about my team, they were always so excited. We'd be down in DC for 3 days working all day really hard on this. And they'd be so excited that we'd have dinner together and they'd be like, oh, you know what, we need to sit down and work for a couple hours. We need to start planning. It wasn't me trying to force them to do that. It was them really just wanting to dig in and do some more work with this and think about how it was going to work in Pennsylvania. You know, the content for this was already created. So the TA team that you would get from, I guess, from Links now, they're your subject matter experts. So you've got this like built-in, you know, national subject matter experts who know all of this and can really just help you move the needle forward. Again, one of the biggest benefits is that I've adapted this model for our other PD initiatives. We use table coaches now at every face-to-face professional learning opportunity that we have. And we now offer follow-up coaching for every course or opportunity that we offer. So everybody gets individualized attention at some point when they sign up for a professional learning opportunity in Pennsylvania. And I think that that's a huge thing for our field. Can I have the next slide, please, Jesse? So I just wanted to show you this example here because another benefit that sort of came a little later on in the process was when we started incorporating the CCRS into more than our ABE instruction, we sort of started to alter the tools to use for other purposes. So here you can see in red, we added some things specific for English language learners so that our ESL teachers could use these tools that were, you know, again, very well developed, but we could tweak them a little to use them with ESL teachers. And we shared some of this with the national team and were given positive feedback on that. So I just wanted to show you sort of the flexibility. Even though the tools are high quality and already created, there's a flexibility to them that as you use them more and more, you will see ways that you can, you know, what we call here Pennsylvania-izing, you can call it Massachusetts-izing or Arizona-izing the tools for your own use. Can we move to the next? So the technical assistance that we received really went so deep, and it helps me to have a more comprehensive understanding of the standards. You know, I'm no longer a classroom practitioner, and when I was, I didn't use standards, or nothing that I knew was called standards at any rate. And because of the understanding of the standards that this TA gave me, I was sort of able to envision using these materials in other ways. So this is an example of that. We have in Pennsylvania a foundation skills framework, which is similar to the employability skills framework, but it was developed by our workforce project here in Pennsylvania. And we actually crosswalked the CCR materials with our foundation skills materials, which are, you know, the workforce preparation skills. And this actually, we did this just because we thought it was a good idea for lesson planning, but the unintended and beneficial that came out of this was that as we started to develop IETs, this already helps you with your alignment of the components, with the integration of your components. So here you've got your ABE, your ESL, your adult education component already aligned with your workforce preparation skills. So when you're trying to integrate that with training, these are already integrated for us. So that was just sort of an accidental thing that came out, but I wouldn't have thought to try to do that if the CCR SIA training hadn't sort of led me there to that deeper understanding of the standards. I don't think I would have seen this connection. So this sort of, we thread the standards now through everything we do. You know, whenever we create a new opportunity for teachers, we make sure that whatever product the teachers create out of that is standards-based. Because we don't want to do standards just to do standards. We want standards to be threaded, you know, through all of our instruction. We can move on. So to what do I attribute the success of Pennsylvania's implementation efforts? I thought about this a lot, and there's really two main prongs to this. And one is something you can control, and one is maybe something you can't. The first thing that you can control is choosing the right team. My pilot teams came from a good cross-section of agencies. I had a large agency and a smaller agency. I had an agency that provided a lot of distance learning. So they were trying to adapt all of this process for doing distance work. They actually provide, live webinar lessons, not just using canned products. So they were working this into everything they did. On my team, besides program people, I had a couple of experts, nationwide experts. I had a nationwide ESL expert, Blair Toso. I had a nationwide math expert, Linda Ginsberg. And so the combination of my experts in topics and my pilot team members just being the right people who were committed just really worked out. So I would say put a lot of time into choosing your pilot team if you decide to do this as a pilot project. The thing that helped with success that you really can't control, although I hope you're all as lucky as I am, is support from the state director. My state director supported this very strongly. She was always behind me on this. And in terms of policy, some things that really helped me make sure that the implementation and the sustainability was there were policy items such as professional learning communities. Every agency has to have one of those. That's policy. Prep time and PD time. Our agencies are required to provide a certain amount to our programs. That's policy. Agencies are required to have somebody called an in-house professional development specialist that leads this work. That's also policy. So, part of the reason this all went so well was because in addition to all of the great materials, I had sort of support from behind I knew I could count on to, sort of the agencies that weren't stepping forward, we could pull them along until they saw the benefit. And finally, what do I think the primary strengths of my implementation implementation initiative was? The professional learning communities were key. They built capacity at the agencies. The agencies can take ownership. The agencies can innovate. And we also developed a series of modules. And those modules are sort of articulate modules that programs can use with their staff. They can watch them in groups and work on, resource alignment together. Bev shared with you all of the different steps in this process: resource alignment, lesson revision, lesson study. We created modules for each of those things that our professional learning communities can use to work through the process. So it's just an additional way, they can come to a face-to-face and learn it. They can do the module with a coach. So I think that was sort of that hybrid flipped delivery model was another strength of our standards implementation initiative. I hope some of this has been helpful for you, and I'm certainly open to questions at any time, not just here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. That was so informative and interesting. At this point in the session, if folks have questions for Christine and Beverly, we can take a couple of them now. We'll also have an opportunity to answer questions at the end of today's webinar. But if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll pause here just for a moment or two. If not, I will start getting into the next portion. Here's one question. Where can we access specific written standards, lessons, observation materials, or samples from AZTA or other programs? I'll let Christine and Bev share if they have materials that are publicly available, but the first place I would start for everyone is the Standards in Action page on links. I'll put the link in the chat, and then I will let Bev and Christine answer if they have materials that are available.
I'll start. This is Christine speaking. I just typed the link into the chat. That is the link to our website. We We share everything we create. All our modules are there. There's a whole section on college and career readiness standards. Our modules are there. Our crosswalks are there. I think anything I spoke about today was there. There are lesson plan templates. We have a small lesson bank. It's not as large as we would like it to be, but we're working on that. So you can certainly, look at anything you want there, and then always send me a question if something doesn't seem clear.
And I'll go ahead and respond to that also. We have not put together a lesson bank yet. It's actually a goal of the teams that are working on the revised content standards. We didn't want to collect a lot of lessons and materials before the content standards are revised. So that's on our to-do list in the next year or two. And as far as there's also a question for Christine about planning time and policy decisions that are made at the state office level. We also do that in Arizona in the grant contract requirements. We require that 10% of all grant funds are put into high quality professional learning, and we outline what that looks like and that it has to align to standards. The standards that I had talked about previously, professional learning standards, teacher standards, and content standards. And our policy also includes paid time for certified teachers to be able to do this work and to plan effective instruction. Christine?
Yes, I think it sounds like what we do is quite similar. We sort of wrap the prep and the PD, and what we say is that instructors can spend no more than 80% of their time in the classroom, and 20% has to be set aside for prep and PD.
Great. Any other questions at this point? Okay. And if you do think of a question as we're going on today, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll respond to it at the close. So at this point, I'm going to move on to engaging in standards and action professional development activities. So first, let's begin by looking at some reasons why it's important to implement standards and action professional development in your states. A state's program leaders and instructors need and deserve trainings to understand and implement your state's new academic content standards. The SAA foundational units introduce key instructional advances of academic standards for mathematics and ELA literacy. To address all of the elements of standards-based reform, training on the foundational units should be followed by advanced standards and action trainings. This includes aligning lessons, instructional materials, assignments, and student work with your standards. The advanced training also promotes continuous instruction on instructional practices aligned with your standards. Highly qualified expert standards, trainers, and coaches can provide face-to-face trainings and individual support on how implementing standards and action trainings can impact instruction and curriculum. All of the Standards and Action Links trainers supported the Standards and Action project and participants. They helped provide the Standards and Action training activities and provided various forms of technical assistance to participating state teams. Given their experience in the Standards and Action project, they are familiar with the content and the nuances of standards implementation in adult education. As we heard from Bev and Christine, putting together an implementation or sustainability plan from the very start provides you with a roadmap for implementation. It identifies outcome expectations. It helps you and others in your state understand and communicate how standards implementation supports and connects with your state's overall adult education philosophy. It communicates why standards implementation is a priority. Our LINK Standards and Action coaches are available to work with you and your implementation teams over the phone or face-to-face to help you create or update a strategic implementation plan. The states and programs that participated in OCTA's Standards and Action initiatives and continue using Standards and Action methods and materials attest to the effectiveness and reliability of the professional development methods and materials. I think we heard both Bev and Christine testify to that. States that are deeply involved in implementing standards have reported that the training embedded in the SIA foundational units 1 through 4 for mathematics and ELA literacy was an essential first step in helping adult educators become comfortable with the demands of their standards. Research shows that organized and effective teams make a huge difference in achieving success. SIA trainers and coaches can help you plan and prepare your state's professional development leads and implementation team members to be prepared to train others. Part of creating a strategic implementation plan, for instance, is determining how and when you will build a core team of state trainers. Once they have been trained on critical aspects of standards implementation, they can then train others. And once you've built a core team of state trainers to train others, all standards and action training materials are online on links. The materials include facilitator guides, participant materials, annotated PowerPoint presentations, and classroom videos. Everything you need to implement the foundational level and advanced level units for ELA literacy standards and for math standards. There are 14 activities, 7 for math and 7 for ELA literacy. In October 2017, last year, OCTAE released a short supplement to the 2014 edition of the Handbook for Sustaining Standards-Based Education in Adult Education. The supplement is entitled Checklists for Assessing Effective Implementation. At its center are 2 checklists. One checklist is the State Leadership Checklist. It identifies the actions needed to sustain an effective standards implementation initiative at the state level. It includes 8 core components of effective implementation. The second checklist is the Program Leadership Checklist, designed for use by state and local program leaders to help guide the implementation of standards at the local and regional level. It also includes 6 sustainability steps that programs should take. Perhaps if you've used the checklists or reviewed them, you've already seen how they can be used as state and program level assessments. In addition to helping states develop a long-range, step-by-step standards implementation plan, the checklists can also help you identify your state's training and technical assistance needs. When you read the lists of various activities that support a state's effective standards implementation, you can see the importance of providing standards training and technical assistance, which is now available from the Standards in Action trainers and coaches through the LINCS Professional Development Center. So let's consider the specific standards in action training activities and technical assistance support that a state could undertake in relation to the stage of its standards implementation. This is a state that's just beginning to think about and organize its standards implementation efforts. And here you can see some of the initial steps. So here is one approach that a state could take at the beginning of the standards implementation initiative. So LINCS Standards in Action trainers can support you in your efforts to develop a long-range implementation plan. To begin with, they can help identify the members of your state's implementation team, a key first step, as we heard Christina touch to. Research shows that organized and effective implementation teams make a huge difference in achieving success. Several studies show that making modest investments in competent teams to drive implementation dramatically improves outcomes. And such investments improve the fidelity and increase the speed of implementation reforms. LINCS SIA coaches will help you size up your context for full-scale integration of standards to determine how best and at what speed to proceed for 3 to 5 years. They'll help you articulate a plan in specific and quantifiable terms. They can also help you set goals for professional development, create realistic expectations and outcomes, and minimize potential challenges and costs. Standards in Action coaches can help you think through the resources needed to support your initiative at state and local program levels, and to support the integration of both ELA literacy standards and mathematics standards. To prepare the implementation team members and professional development leads to train others, states may decide to bring on board LINCS Standards in Action trainers in math and ELA literacy who can train implementation team members and professional development leads. The state can also decide to partner with 2 other states to provide this initial training. States have decided to provide training about the key instructional advances of state-adopted academic standards for math and ELA literacy that must be enacted in classrooms. The SIA foundational level PD units cover this content, which will prepare the teams to train others in the state. As part of writing the state's implementation plan, our SIA coaches help states determine when to offer to the team members training on other critical aspects of standards implementation, such as quality of materials, assessments, and instructional practice. The SIA advanced units cover these methods and materials. One question a state might want to discuss when writing its plan is when to provide its team members with the advanced level SIA trainings. In this scenario, the state has decided to schedule and deliver the foundational PD units statewide before offering to its team members the advanced level training units. After the state provides the foundational level training to team members and professional development leads, the next step is providing the training to program leads and instructors. The SIA LINKS trainers will provide that training. The trained implementation team members and PD leads serving as table coaches can help the LINKS SIA trainers. The SIA trainers typically travel to the state the day before the foundational level trainings to prepare the team members and PD leads to facilitate the tabletop activities and participant discussions. This state is hoping that following this foundational level training for program level folks, that the implementation team members and PD leads can take responsibility for providing future foundation level trainings. The future trainings are intended to build the number of committed, trained, local program staff and to address staff turnover. When the state leaders created their state's strategic implementation plan and set their professional development goals, they anticipated the necessity of offering both the beginning level SIA units and the advanced level SIA PD units. The foundational units introduced the state's adult educators to the key instructional advances that identify the most significant aspects of high quality academic content standards in math and ELA literacy. Having experienced the foundational trainings, the state's practitioners now clearly understood the intent of their state-adopted academic content standards, what knowledge and skills are to be taught. The state's leaders and implementation team members decided to move ahead in their plans to next provide the advanced level SIA trainings. The three trainings build on and extend the foundational level learning. This slide lists the topics of the three advanced SIA trainings for mathematics and ELA literacy. I won't read them for you. I think you can read them yourself. These trainings are important because they delve into the instructional implications of level-specific standards. They help to shape the approach that instructors and program leaders take to implement their state standards. To begin with, the state's implementation team and PD leads reviewed the strategic implementation plan to see if it needed to be updated or revised. They scheduled a call with their SIA LINKS trainers and coaches to review plans for moving ahead to integrate the advanced SIA professional development. After reflecting on the plans, they decided to expand the time frame for providing the They decided, based on feedback from local programs, that the process to integrate the foundation trainings was too rushed or intense. So they revised the plan to expand the time frame for providing the SIA trainings in the advanced SIA trainings. One important lesson that states may learn is that supporting a standards initiative at both the state and local program level takes time, perseverance, and patience, and resources. Setting realistic expectations in specific and quantifiable terms is key. States can expect hiccups as they travel through the roadmap of implementation. Earlier in the webinar, we mentioned creating a 3 to 5 year strategic implementation plan for your state. Standards in Action states and programs and the Standards in Action trainers and coaches can vouch for the value of long-range planning and revising your plans on a regular and collaborative basis. States can also decide to follow the professional development model used previously. That is, to train the professional development leads and standards implementation team members first, so that they could then help to prepare the state's local service providers through state and regional level trainings. Once again, states can partner with other states to join in on this effort. The advanced units can be taught in any order you choose, because learning the content in one unit does not depend on learning the content in the other units. Therefore, this state consulted with their Standards in Action LINCS trainer to decide which order would best meet their state needs. In their decision making, they considered that Unit 1, for example, takes 2 days of training, and Units 2 and 3 each require 1 day of training. For a full description of all of the SIA trainings and technical assistance opportunities, please take a look at the LINCS catalog. It's available on the link on the page there, and you can jump ahead to pages 5 through 12, which have full descriptions of each of those trainings. They also list suggested duration of trainings, as well as a full description. So if you can't get that link through the PowerPoint, we'll put it in the chat box as well. For states that are interested in learning more about how your state can access Standards in Action professional development trainings, please contact the LINCS Professional Development Center. The email is on the screen. It's pdcenter@lincs.ed.gov, and we would be happy to talk further with you about how we can come to your state and help support. So I am going to move us into Q&A, and again, we can have some questions for Beverly, Christine, and or myself. So the first question I see here is, how did you use the Standards Initiative to create a high-quality curriculum for low literacy students? And I think this is a question for Christine and Bev, and Miriam clarifies. By low literacy, I mean students who might have learning disabilities and or persons with little education in their countries. So I'll turn it over to you, Christine and Bev.
I just responded in the chat. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was typing and thinking. So that's a really great question.
Why don't you go ahead,
Low
Bev?
literacy. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Christine. Low literacy students are not necessarily students that have learning disabilities. However, they do have challenges in sometimes acquiring new information and skills. Why I often refer to adult education students, though, as being instructionally challenged. So with that said, our new standards do speak specifically to the foundational skills that students need to know and be able to do to help low literacy students get over that hump and be able to get to that next level of instruction, primarily at that ABE2 to ABE3 level. And so one of the innovations in the Standards in Action is the resource alignment tool that we referred to earlier in the webinar. And that is a wonderful resource that our programs will be able to use to ensure that the resources that they're using at their program level, whether they're web-based or print-based, align to the standards, including those foundational skills standards. Christine?
So I think one of the benefits of using the Standards in Action project is you'll see sort of across the standards, you can differentiate across the standards. So I don't know that we have anybody who specifically created a high-quality curriculum for low literacy students. I think that they're used differently in different situations. So somebody, for instance, with a learning disability, and I agree with Bev, a learning disability is not necessarily a low literacy situation, but somebody with a learning disability, you know, we have learning differences toolkits, and those toolkits that are already in the classrooms might be used, I could see them being used to address a concept or a skill which would tie in with the standards. So I think for us, it would be about differentiation. It wouldn't necessarily be about a specific curriculum. And as for little education in their own countries, I assume you're talking about ELL learners. And we are actually currently working on crosswalking the English language proficiency standards with the CCRS and coming up with an implementation plan that we're hopefully going to start that initiative next year.
Great, those were great answers. Are there any other questions for anyone who, Christine or myself? Okay, we'll give folks another minute or two. If you do have questions after this webinar that come to you in the night, feel free to email them to pbcenter@lincs.ed.gov, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. We'll give folks just another minute or two if you do have some questions. Otherwise, I would just want to thank everyone for their time today, both participants and speakers. Christine and Bev, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with the SIA project. Hopefully you've given folks on this webinar some food for thought about how they may choose to engage as well. And I just really thank you for sharing so openly with everybody. Okay, well, we'll maybe stop the recording and hang out for just a minute or two if folks do have questions. But if not, thank you all so much for attending today. We really appreciate it and hope to hear from you. Thanks so much.